Hi, I'm Jim Covington. Today is Thursday, March 13th, 2014. I'd like to welcome you to this week's issue of ISBA Statehouse Review. The General Assembly has 2 more weeks of committee work, and at that point a lot of the bills we hope will be kind of sloughed off because they will not have made it out of a substantive committee with a favorable roll call, and that gives us a more finite view of the world of what's out there so we can devote more attention to the bills that are still pending. There are 7 bills still pending that I'd like to talk to you about. The first one is House Bill 5825, introduced by Representative David Leach from Peoria. It amends the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act. If a life insurance policy does not constitute marital property upon entry of the order of dissolution of marriage or declaration of invalidity of marriage, a beneficiary designation that provides for the death benefits under that act is automatically revoked. This is not applicable if the court orders otherwise, or the insured affirmatively designates otherwise in a signed writing executed after the entry of order of dissolution of marriage. That's scheduled for a hearing next Thursday in House Judiciary Committee. The next bill I'd like to talk to you about is House Bill 5686, introduced by Representative Barbara Curry from Chicago. This bill has not yet been assigned to a substantive committee. It is still in House rules, but it does 3 things to the Guardianship Act for minors. The first thing it does is requires guardians to petition the court before removing children from Illinois for more than 30 days with proper notice to the parents. 2, it requires guardians to inform the court of the children's current address within 30 days of any change of residence. 3, it requires the court to honor short-term guardian appointments made by parents unless the guardian is unfit, unable, or unwilling to care for the children. The third bill I'd like to talk to you about is House Bill 5575 that amends the uninsured and underinsured sections of the Illinois Insurance Code. House Bill 5575 is introduced by Representative Mike Zaleski of Chicago. It's scheduled for a hearing next Wednesday in House Insurance Committee, and it provides that arbitration awards entered on the UM and UIM arbitration are binding by removing the trial de novo provision. Under current law, awards under $50,000 for one person, injuries or death to one person, are binding, but injuries or death over in excess of $50,000 are not binding. The same thing occurs for the injuries or death to 2 or more people. The $100,000 under that limit, it is binding, but over that limit, it is not binding. This makes the arbitration binding, whether it's below or above that limit. The next bill I'd like to talk to you about amends the Freedom of Information Act. It's House Bill 5875, introduced by Representative Yingling from Haynesville, and it provides that the definition of a public body will include any statewide organization that receives 75% or more of its funding through contributions from taxing bodies for the sake of membership or dues in order to participate in the organization's activities. That's scheduled for a House committee hearing next week. The next bill I'd like to talk to you about is a substantial rewrite of the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act. It's House Bill 1452, introduced by Representative Kelly Burke from Evergreen Park area. This bill has not been filed, but it's being circulated. It's a pretty major rewrite of the Marriage Act, and I encourage you to follow that and download a copy of it when it is introduced as an amendment to that act, because it's a pretty substantial change in the current practice. The next bill I'd like to talk to you about is a constitutional amendment, HJRCA 1, introduced by Representative Lou Lang from Skokie, has amendments to the current victims' rights section of the Illinois Constitution and is scheduled for a hearing next Thursday in House Judiciary Committee. The 7th and final bill I'd like to talk to you about is Senate Bill 3040, introduced by Senator Kwame Raoul of Chicago, and it amends the Common Interest Community Association Act and the Condominium Property Act to basically allow the use of electronic voting to be used in the association's management and association votes on things for purposes of quorum, conducting elections, how to conduct those elections. It deletes provisions concerning secret ballots. There's a safe harbor if you simply don't have access to that stuff. And the final thing that bill does, it's that broader than this, for community interest, common interest community associations having 10 units or less, it makes it exempt from the Common Interest Community Association Act. Under current law, it's 10 units or less, or an annual budget of 100,000 or less. This just says, if you have 10 units or less. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.